All right, so Pugami Creek, when we showed up, it was pouring rain in Minnesota. The whole day's drive into Minnesota, it was pouring rain and frogs jumping across the road, like it, epic proportions type stuff. So there's no fire really to speak of when we got there. But this fire was in the boundary waters near the Canadian border, and I think there's probably as much water across the landscape as there is land. And so the first kind of couple hours was an orientation where they taught us how to paddle canoes, and most of us have done it in the past. Well, of course, we picked the day where there's gale force winds, and one of the things they mentioned, well, no one's ever tipped over during this orientation. Well, sure enough, we had one of our leads with a fill-in get this gust of wind that blew him into some reeds and tipped over, and I don't think I've ever laughed that hard in my life, and I was crying. And the lead was so upset when he was hiking out of the water and holding his paddle, just he felt bad laughing at him. And the fill-in's out there trying to drag the boat back to shore. It was great. But that experience there, so we did 21 days in the boundary waters. Not much fire to speak of, like I said, but just the experience was so phenomenal. I'd love to take my family there someday and spend a few weeks, because basically they give you your canoe and fire gear, and you paddle out there, and then you portage across the little land bridges until the next lake, and paddle and portage and paddle and portage. And as we extended along the fire, there's more and more of that, and ended up breaking up into a couple groups in the crew just so we could spread out even more. But after 21 days, and it was one of those assignments where there was no cell service, no contact whatsoever with the outside world. The only thing we had was just a command that would get on the radio with us once a day, maybe, to check the status. And I think it must have been like day 19 or 20. These wilderness rangers from the boundary waters made it all. It was almost, by that point, a full day's paddle and portage out to where we had been. And we're all pretty haggard, and we were getting kind of loopy at this point. We were doing things to entertain ourselves, like having skits. We were breaking up into groups and doing skits at night in camp. Real silly stuff looking back. But anyway, these two wilderness rangers paddle out just to check up on their camps that they had out here and making sure they weren't getting too trashed, and we were taking good care of them. But they get out there and they were asking, we kind of bombarded them. We were in camp when they showed up, and we were asking them a bunch of questions, and they brought a newspaper with them, which was nice. And but there were so many questions being asked to these two guys at the same time, and then they were trying to answer, and who won this game. And one of the things they said was, well, you guys probably haven't heard yet that they are kicking out the Occupy protesters out of Times Square. And we all kind of cock our heads and look at each other like we're supposed to know what he's talking about. And this was probably the first time we were all quiet. And somebody finally spoke up. What's Occupy? And he kind of stopped and thought to himself for a second, and he cocked his own head. And how long have you guys been out here? Is what he said. We probably lost track of days at that point, and he finally realized that we had no idea what was going on in the outside world. Pretty much had to take a large step back to fill us in on what was really going on. It was one of those, even for us, it was like, oh, well, we really have been out here a while and haven't seen ourselves besides the reflection in the water in a long time. So and the experience was so great out there. There was, I kind of had a little collapsible fishing pole I snuck in my bag, and there was one night, so we kind of had this rotation. Either you were doing dishes or making lunches for the whole crew the next day, or you were making dinner. And so, there was a group making dinner. I was out there fishing. I never caught anything, of course, but the northern lights were out. I'd never seen them before. It was like it was amazing. And across the lake that we were on, it wasn't a big lake. Across the lake there was wolves howling. And it's something that, like, I look back, it still gives me chills. Just, in that moment, it was my heaven, right? It was just like, you can't make this up. This is the most spectacular moment I've ever had. I'm fishing, which I love to do. There's northern lights I've never seen. It was awesome. And then the wolves were howling. It was this great camping experience for us. And gosh, it was just, for an experience on a fire, I don't think I'll ever be able to beat that. That was a great time. It was a long time, but it was a great time.